Hello again folks, this video is about the actor Brian Cox. Now if you don't know who Brian Cox is, he was William Wallace's uncle in Braveheart and he was Major Hogan in the British TV series Sharp. He has been in loads and loads of films, too many to mention here, but you can easily look him up if you want to know about the guy. But more often than not now, you will see him on British TV advocating and pushing real hard for his native Scotland's independence from the UK. And it turns out he's a bit of he's a huge, massive douchebag as well as a hypocrite. Because he's just released a book where he slags off nearly everyone he's worked with, even Sir Michael Caine. So this Brian Cox fella turns out to be a huge, miserable drip. So anyway, here's a clip of him, and he's on the Andrew Marr show on the BBC. And sat next to him is the Labour leader, Keir Starmer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the clip and stop it every now and again and point out their hypocrisy for a laugh. But before I do that, I just want to give a mention to the late, great and legendary Benny Hill, because he made a sketch where he nailed these hypocritical wealthy socialists on the head.
I hate rich people. I mean, half the world's starving to death, and he lives like that. I mean, I ask you. You see, I believe in a fairer distribution of wealth. I always have done. Well, I'm a socialist, you see. And I think, we should all do everything we can to help, because that is the creed. So.
Benny Hill there, back in the day when comedy was comedy, it wasn't always political, and it was just goddamn funny. So, here's the clip, Andrew Marr show, this was taken the other day, here's Brian Cox and Keir Starmer.
You were always a great Labour supporter. You spoke at the late John Smith's funeral, and a friend of Gordon Brown in the old days, and you moved to the SNP. First of all, just tell us briefly why.
It's Andrew. We really haven't got enough time. It's a long story. And it comes really down to what I thought was a failure of social democracy, particularly around about 2012, 2010. Also, the Iraq War, that affected me. Blair's hubris affected me.
How the hell did the Iraq War affect you? You didn't serve in the army. You weren't part of the invasion. You're not one of the unlucky Iraqi civilians who it really did affect. So what he's done here is he has appropriated other people's feelings when he wasn't involved in it. Anyway, moving on. Isn't that how it works, lefties?
And I saw the party going in a certain direction. And I was really very concerned because I am a socialist. I'm riven. I'm very riven about the party. And I totally agree with Keir on so many things.
There we go, folks. He's a socialist. He is that Benny Hill character from that sketch I just showed you. Look, I've looked up Brian Cox on the internet and his net worth is $15 million. He owns numerous properties in New York. And looking deeper into him on the internet, it doesn't look like he's sharing his wealth like all socialists should if they practiced what they preached. The only charities he seems to be concerned with are Age Concern, Age UK and PETA. So Age Concern, Age UK, they are charities that deal with pensioners, elderly people, and PETA is an animal charity. Now, I doubt very much that he has shared his $15 million with any of these charities, or anyone else for that matter. So, moving on.
But my country was traduced for long enough, time and time again. We voted 62% to stay in Europe, and we were ignored.
Now, I don't know what part of Scotland is part of the United Kingdom that idiots like Brian Cox doesn't understand. The Brexit vote was countrywide, it was nationwide, it was union-wide. The Scots, back in 2014, was it 2013, 2014? They had their own referendum about Scottish independence and they voted overwhelmingly to stay in the United Kingdom. So that Brexit vote counted as a whole. That's how democracy works. If Scotland was its own country and it voted to remain, then that would have been fair, that would have been it. The people would have spoken. But sadly for people like Brian Cox and Jimmy Cranky and the SNP voters up north, Scotland is still part of the UK. The sooner they take that on board, the better it would be for them to deal with it.
If you think about the Thatcher years, we were ignored. So Scotland has always been sidelined.
Scotland hasn't been sidelined. It gets subsidised heavily by the British taxpayer. You see, Scotland gets more money spent on them per head than anywhere else in the United Kingdom. Thanks to the British Union, thanks to the British taxpayer, they get free university places. They get free prescriptions. They don't have to pay for parking in hospitals. And it goes on. Scotland does very well under the Union, and they're not sidelined, as this oaf suggests on screen right now.
A good pithy reply, Brian. Kia, is there anything you can say to Brian to win him back, do you think?
Well, I hope so, because it is certainly true that we have to do a lot of hard work in Scotland. I think what Brian has said is really the most important thing, which is actually respect and listening to Scotland has to be an essential part of this, not an afterthought, not a secondary consideration. And I think there's space for that. I actually do think there's a lot that we would agree on, and that is a good basis for building the future. But, you know, have we got a lot of work to do? Yes, we have.
Right, listening and respecting people. Keir Starmer is a Remainer, and he pushed for the people's vote. The people's vote were a group of Ramonas, celebrities, MPs, mainstream media, who were unhappy with the Brexit vote. And they tried absolutely every dirty trick in the book to make sure that we remained within the European Union. They pushed for the so-called people's vote, completely disregarding the real people's vote, which had taken in 2016 when the majority voted to leave the EU. So this is complete hypocrisy on Keir Starmer's part. And Brian Cox can't even look at him because he knows he's lying. Keir Starmer is one of the ultimate look in your face and lie at you politicians, and Brian Cox knows this. Keir Starmer didn't respect and didn't listen to the Brexit vote in 2016. He wanted Britain to remain in the EU, and he supported the people's vote, the so-called people's vote, to try and get us back into the EU. Keir Starmer won't even listen to his own people, let alone the Scottish people, and Brian Cox knows this.
And the truth is, you can't get to number 10 without Scotland. You need Scottish seats. Is there any kind of new arrangement you can make with the SNP, any kind of conversation that would help you get back via Scotland to number 10?
No, Andrew, as I think I've said to you before, there's no basis for a deal before we go into an election nor coming out of an election.
Nothing you can do to persuade them. I'm looking at Logan Roy here with a deeply unimpressed you've got a smile back on your face. But so what's your response to that?
Well, it's a hard question. It really is. It's a painful question. You know, I've been caught. You know, I look at what happened in the north and during the last election. I was devastated by that because I'm a socialist. Principally, I'm a socialist, but also I have to put my country first because I have looked at what's happened to my country and I'm disgusted by what's happened. And the penny only dropped later. I didn't, because I was young, I was ambitious. I was thinking about other things. I wasn't thinking about politics. And of course, I was the voice of Labour in 1997. I did all the ads and I gave myself to it. But in the end of the day, Scotland is prime for me.
Scotland is prime for me. You live in New York, mate. You live nowhere near Scotland. You don't care about the Scots or anything. If the Scots had independence, they wouldn't even get into the EU because Spain have already said they'd veto them. Scotland has its own debt on top of the debt that the UK has as a whole, which it would somehow need to get rid of. And it can't. That debt is in the trillions. Scottish independence would affect the poor people in Scotland, not the so-called, the plastic patriots, the wealthy socialists who live abroad, yet show full concern about their country, who are okay because it wouldn't touch them. The poverty, the extreme quick changes that would come about in that country if it did become independent, even if it joined the EU, it wouldn't have a currency. It would not be allowed to take sterling with it into the EU. The EU have said so, Brussels has said so, they don't want sterling within the EU. And Westminster have also said Scotland will not be allowed to keep the sterling. So why on earth do these topical news political programmes keep asking these really wet actors and actresses to come on their shows and give their opinion? I'm all for free speech, but why not get some ordinary working class man or woman, a business owner who started from the scratch up about how politics affects them, because they're the people that count. Not these wealthy left-wing socialist celebrities who love being in front of the camera so they can cry about political decisions that they don't agree with. So if you ask me, people like Brian Cox are political charlatans. They really are. And they push for socialism. I don't understand why the hell they push for socialism when they've done rather well under the capitalist system they now despise. They're okay. They've got their houses, they've got their cars, they've got their pensions. They're wealthy, they're well off. And it would take nearly a revolution in a country to affect their wealth and their well-being and affect them in any way. Of course, that's not going to happen. They're just absolute hypocrites. Can you imagine what socialism would do for this country? And I can guarantee you, folks, if idiots like Brian Cox had lived under a socialist country back in the day, he wouldn't be advocating for it now. These socialists, it's like they're playing with matches, but have yet to know what fire is. That's what I think, anyway. So please let me know what you think in the comments. That's my video done. And if you'd like to support my channel, then by all means, you can buy me a beer. The link's down below. And that's that. So please comment, share, subscribe, and until my next video, Roger Trout.